Welcome to Discover Delmarva, our biographical series where we will travel into the past to the humble beginnings of Delmarva's great leaders, ordinary people who grew to be men and women of purpose and destiny. They are dedicated and determined to making a difference in the lives of people here on Delmarva. We'll peek into their past and watch their dreams come to life. History is important, especially here on the peninsula. In that history are lessons of integrity, perseverance, and hope. Today, the story of an impoverished boy who grew up to be a successful businessman and well-known philanthropist. It's the inspiring story of Johnny Janosik, next on Discover Delmarva.
WBOC's Discover Delmarva is made possible in part by Discover Bank and the Delaware Community Foundation.
Johnny Janosik's story begins in the 1930s in a tar paper shack in Hopewell, Virginia. The four Janosik children were always hot, cold, or hungry in this three-bedroom shack with no plumbing. Their father was a second-generation immigrant from Czechoslovakia, and though he was a hard worker, earning a wage for his family led him out of town and out of the country.
We owned a house, he owned a car, he lost it all. When he stopped working, he couldn't make payments, we had to sell everything.
Their Polish mother's limited education made it difficult for her to manage the family finances, and by age 11, Johnny was the man of the household, scraping for food, earning some change, all while staying in school.
We hunted squirrels, rabbits, and then we went duck hunting down the creeks. Now, a lot of kids hunt today with their dads, but we hunted to eat. And my brother Billy and I pushed slab wood on a saw all day long at a sawmill, and the man gave us 10 cents. And come home and the blood almost run out of your fingers where you worked. And guess what? We'd go right in his store and spend the 10 cents on candy. So he got us coming and going.
But the long-distance relationship was just too great of an obstacle to overcome, so John and Emily Janosik separated. He kept the boys, she took the girls. To Johnny, it felt as if his mother had abandoned him and taken a huge chunk of his life with her. But through it, he learned a valuable lesson in survival, a lesson that would prove pivotal in his future endeavors, the willingness to do what it takes to get by and get ahead.
Billy and I stayed with Dad, and when we came home, it was just an empty house. And we had to scratch for our own meal. Dad was working. There was nothing there.
So Johnny held on to his family and his schooling. He knew that his brother needed him, and though his father would never admit it, he needed Johnny as well. Johnny also understood the importance of education. He'd learned from his parents that you don't have to be wealthy to chase the American dream, just willing. A young Johnny watched Hopewell's economy plummet, its workers lose their jobs, and his brothers and sisters quit school. It was then that he decided to plot his own course.
The hardest thing that I ever had to do was go to school, because we could just as easily not done anything. Just like the kids today that are left like that, they don't know where to go. And just by what's inside of you, I was determined I was going to go to school.
Johnny saw greatness in his future, and Hopewell was not going to help him get there. So in the summer of 1942, Johnny took a trip that would change his life forever. At age 16, a petrified Johnny boarded the only bus in Hopewell and began the journey to Laurel, Delaware.
I started out, I think, with $5. The bus trip and the hotel room one night, I was down to $2, and I didn't eat from the day all through the night until I got in Laurel, because I didn't know what I was faced with.
Johnny had accepted an invitation to stay with the Goffs for the summer. Mary Goff and Johnny's mom were very good friends when the Goffs had lived next door to the Janosiks back in Hopewell, Virginia.
My kids and Miss Janosiks really got close, and my oldest son, Johnny, loved Jack. That's why he said, come up here.
Johnny was able to get a job at a cannery just down the street. For the first time, he was making real money. By the end of the summer, he'd earned $92, and he felt like a millionaire. But he knew it was time to return to Hopewell now that the summer was over. Mary Goff told Johnny she knew he'd be back, and she was right. After just 2 weeks back in Hopewell, Johnny left for good.
Good Lord kept saying, do something. Don't let it happen to you what had happened to the rest of the family. And I was so unhappy going back home, I decided I'm going to come back. So in September, Mrs. Goff opened the door and there I was on her doorstep.
So he said he had nowhere to stay, and I said, well, you can stay right here as long as you want to. And he was a good boy. He didn't give nobody any trouble. And I loved him just as much as I do the rest of my family.
By age 18, he was on his second journey, this time with the U.S. Navy into the battles of World War II. Johnny couldn't imagine facing a greater fear than when he first boarded that bus and traveled to a new town. But here was a bigger, greater fear staring him right in the face. But with great fear comes great opportunity. While dashing young Navy officers spent the weekends on the town, Johnny was pressing their uniforms for them at $1 apiece. Already he was creating opportunities of entrepreneurship. While aboard the USS Louisville in 1944, a suicide bomber hit his ship, devastating the whole room and everyone in it, except for Johnny and his friend Bob Post.
The best spot to be in is when it explodes. Right where the explosion is, it goes out. And we happen to be sitting right where that hole blew out. And then, of course, naturally we were injured, but we're not dead.
This was Johnny's first escape from some close calls with death, but it certainly would not be his last.
Looked like I'd been shot in the face, and then I had shrapnel through the shoulder, ended up under my arm, and it was a miracle to me that we're both alive.
Johnny wondered he must be here for a reason, and nothing would keep him from accomplishing whatever it was. Little did he know that his journey back to Laurel would bring the opportunity of a lifetime. The visionary meets his counterpart next on Discover Delmarva.
We both have totally different personalities. We have different ways of doing things.
The first time Johnny Janosik met Mary Louise Hedges, he asked her out on a date.
John came over and asked me for a date, and I thought he was kidding because he was older than I was. So I kind of didn't know what to say, so I just kind of giggled and left.
And I was kind of pouting, insulted, you know. I thought, well, how can she not say yes? She really hurt my feelings.
So then he asked me again, and so I said yes. So we went to the movies. I thought he was handsome, and I don't know, I just, just one of those things. I guess it was love at first sight, maybe.
Mary Louise came from a good family. She was a serious person who knew what she wanted in life and was already pursuing an education in nursing.
John's a visionary, and he can dream up things, but once he dreams them up and gets them finished, then he's out of it. It's left kind of to me and the rest of the group.
Though many say that behind every good man is a good woman, Johnny is the first to point out that his good woman is beside, not behind him.
She is the person, as I always say, who's kept the family, the business together. She does the everyday chores, or she used to, meaning running the office, running the bookkeeping department, being an accountant, paying the bills, raising the 3 children, keeping the home.
My mother was always like that. She always took care of everything, and the family, the finances, and I just grew up thinking that was the way it should be, and I enjoy it.
It took only one date for Mary Louise and Johnny to believe that their love would last a lifetime.
I always felt I wanted to settle down, and when I first met her, I thought, not bad.
It was love at first sight.
And it all clicked ever since.
This faith is what started it all, but little did they know how much faith and love they would need to survive the next few stages in their lives. In the early 1950s, Johnny was working as a TV repairman for RCA, but a storm was coming and Johnny could see it. RCA had developed the black and white television and was at the top of the market, but as televisions became more prevalent, prices began to fall, and soon RCA was the highest priced model. Sales dropped, RCA began slowing production and shutting down service centers in Delaware and Maryland. By 1953, Johnny had been relocated to Easton and then to Salisbury. In the midst of what could have been a career disaster, Johnny saw it as an opportunity to leave and start his own business. He did, just in time.
Well, lo and behold, August and September of '54, Hurricane Hazel came through. And it knocked all the chicken houses down and all the antennas down on everybody's roof. On 13A, which was 13 coming from Salisbury through Delmarva up to Laurel. And I had 400 antenna calls and service calls stacked up. And that was my real jump start a year later. And then it's been going ever since.
Rough times were still ahead. While on a call one day, Johnny and his assistant were removing a 40-foot antenna from a home. As they cut the guide wires and pushed the antenna toward the ground, steel began melting and sparks began to fly. The antenna had hit a power line. Johnny and his assistant just missed being electrocuted. By 1955, mobile TV had too much work to handle, so Johnny partnered with a former manager from RCA, and they moved the business to Salisbury, increasing their service to 21 dealerships and 13 servicemen. They handled up to 100 calls a day, but soon Johnny's partner wanted out, and they agreed on a buyout. Johnny brought the business back to his new home in Laurel, where Mary Louise answered the phone and kept the books. This was the beginning of the family business, Johnny's TV. But another nearly fatal accident would be just ahead. In the summer of 1958, at about 8:30 one morning, Johnny was about to cross an intersection on Route 13. A tractor trailer loaded with chickens was approaching the highway, completely oblivious to the upcoming stop sign. The driver was asleep at the wheel.
I remember hitting the windshield coming in thousands of pieces, and I left the wheel, hit the trailer, and bounced back in. 57 and 60 colliding. My body weight was 3,000 pounds on impact. So there's no way in the world you could hold yourself. It's like a missile going off. And from here down to here, they said you were lucky you didn't pull your arm off. I had it wrapped in the wheel.
I was at home, and I got a call from the hospital. And I had two little children, two little girls, and they were there, and I tried to get hold of my sister, and she didn't answer.
At the hospital, Johnny was treated for 3 broken ribs, 3 chipped vertebrae, a crushed arm, and a face filled with glass chips. It took 21 days in the hospital to recover from these injuries.
When I drove over there all by myself, not knowing what I was going to find, I guess, I was getting more nervous by the minute. And when I walked in, he was laying on a table, and, you know, he looked terrible. And, you know, there was glass all over him, and I think actually there was some blood running out of both eyes. And I just said, oh my God, what have you done now? I didn't know what else to say. I didn't want to say you look terrible.
Just 2 years later, Johnny was painting windowsills when the ladder slipped beneath him. 20 feet below, he fell to the pavement and split his head open. Everyone who saw it was sure he'd killed himself this time. Though he went to the hospital with a fractured skull and a broken collarbone, Johnny pulled through once again.
She always said, you're worse than a cat, you've got 9 lives.
The early 1970s were bringing great success to the Janosik business. Johnny and Mary Louise took the advice of a friend to include furniture in their appliance store, and business began to pick up. The Janosiks had found their niche as furniture became the foundation of their business. But Laurel's downtown was not doing well in the mid-70s. Johnny and Mary Louise knew it was time to make a drastic move to Route 13 for more visibility, a move that would not prove profitable until after the recession of the early 1980s.
In 9 months, it went from almost $1 million in sales to 300. I had a crash program. I had to do something. I traveled from Bridgeville to Salisbury trying to find a place on 13. Because I knew I had to get out from downtown or I wouldn't be here in a year.
Johnny was 54 years old when the Janosik family store hit rock bottom. Sales hadn't slowed, they'd stopped.
He did whatever was necessary to bring it forward again. He delivered watermelons, we sold wood stoves, he did whatever was necessary to keep the employees working and keep the store afloat.
Johnny and Mary Louise knew they had to do whatever it took to keep the store open. Not only were they on the brink of bankruptcy, but their employees and families were counting on their paychecks.
It's an extended family to him. He has helped employees through the years. He is interested in them. He's interested in their extended family.
Some members of the community were still upset with the Janosiks for abandoning downtown Laurel in its time of recession, but they didn't see what Johnny and Mary Louise Janosik envisioned in the near future.
You've passed my store on Route 13. It used to be a broiler house filled with chicks, but not anymore. Now it's filled with Whirlpool appliances, RCA TV sets, and the finest furniture. Where else would you want to buy?
Johnny Janosik.
The Route 13 market would bring a new kind of shopping experience to Delaware, and both of these ventures would create hundreds of jobs, putting food and health care within reach of those who were willing to work hard. But Johnny and Mary Louise had an even greater vision for the future of their community. Next on Discover Delmarva.
If you want a lifetime of happiness, help someone else.
Johnny would never forget where it all started long ago, and that's why he carries out his vision for the future with such passion. To the Janosiks, wealth is not just in dollars and cents, but in people's lives.
Their family is mine, and you feel like they make you feel like you're a part of the business and that you've helped it grow.
When I needed some help in that situation, I called John within 10 minutes from wherever he was. He was here to this house, and when I told him what I needed, temporarily to get me to where I needed to be, he never hesitated a second. You can't buy friends like that.
He's a giving man. He's a strong businessman, that side of it. But the same side that people don't see is he's a giving person. Again, like I say, I've never asked him yet for something he said no.
For 3 years, Johnny had an early morning routine that was hard to break. Nearly every day, he was listening to messages and making calls, not at the furniture store, but at the Good Samaritan Aid organization in Laurel. Johnny was connecting people in need with the necessities of life, everything from obtaining prescription medicine to getting electric bills paid. And when other organizations couldn't meet their needs, Johnny found a way.
Everything that he does has an impact. And I can't really say, names, but there's a multitude. They may not realize who it is, but there's a multitude.
Every Christmas, Johnny joins over 100 other volunteers to ring bells, raising money for the Hope House. The Hope House consists of 4 transitional homes for people who have lost housing due to emergency situations. When Johnny and Mary Louise learned that construction of the last 2 buildings was in jeopardy because of money problems, they took personal responsibility to contract and financially back the last 2 houses.
He's just there, whatever it needs to be, whether it's actually getting his hands dirty or whether it's helping with a financial problem, whatever it is, he'll get involved.
The Janosik store serves as an operations center to coordinate furniture donations for people who have been burned out of their homes. And because education was such an important aspect in Johnny's life, even as a child, he and Mary Louise began the Janosik Family Charitable Foundation, supporting educational efforts including local libraries, school programs, and special education initiatives.
He wants to see all kids succeed, so I think that he's grasped a hold of that to the point where that he's very instrumental, in this library addition that's getting ready to happen.
In many, many different ways, educationally, community, and medically, the Janosik Family Foundation is having a tremendous impact.
As Johnny Janosik looks back on the past 60 years in Laurel, Delaware, he is grateful that a third-generation immigrant was given the opportunity to chase the American dream. It is for that reason that 12 years ago he joined the Laurel Redevelopment Corporation. In the early 80s, nearly an entire block of downtown Laurel had been taken over by drug dealers and users. Johnny's TV was one of the many prosperous businesses that used to operate from the buildings. He, along with the LRC, knew they had to improve what had become of downtown Laurel. Johnny personally spearheaded the fundraising by making calls and expressing the importance of helping Laurel to survive and prosper. The community agreed, and today there is a beautiful park in place of the rundown buildings.
Without people like John, and John, being the strong one of the group, probably would never happen. Laurel would be like it used to be. Economically, it's created a lot of jobs because there's a lot of businesses that have settled down there.
The LRC also developed the Laurel Town shops from what was once open fields and dilapidated houses. In addition, the LRC bought the area surrounding Broad Creek as an effort to preserve the natural landscape. Once again, Johnny made a personal commitment to this project. He and 3 employees from the Janosik store planned and physically built the Creekside Park themselves. Now the area is lovingly called Janosik Park by the citizens of Laurel.
Johnny and Mary Louise are 2 of the most can-do individuals I've ever met. Whether it's transforming a chicken house to the leading furniture store on the Delmarva Peninsula, or providing energy and vision for the Laurel Redevelopment Corporation and completely transforming downtown Laurel. Whether it is Janosik Park or just any number of examples, they are the 2 best examples of can-do people that I can think of. They can do and will do.
You would think at 78 years old that as successful he's been, that John would want to take it easy, but I think he's happy doing these type of things.
Johnny Janosik is a story of success, of chasing the American dream and catching an even bigger one for the future. Survival? Yes, Johnny Janosik is a survivor. He survived World War II, severe car accidents, near electrocution, and health problems. Along the way, the Janosik family business has survived. Johnny and Mary Louise's marriage has survived 52 years and counting. Johnny believes they've survived these trials for a purpose, to pass along their skills to others who need them. That's why Johnny and Mary Louise offer a hand up, not a hand out.
There's more step than putting a jacket on you and put food in your mouth. That's only for today. How about tomorrow when they've got 3 kids? What are we going to do tomorrow? Through the Good Samaritan. We follow up a lot in 30 days to see if these people are still able to support themselves, be able to begin to live on their own.
When Discover Delmarva returns, Johnny talks about the cost of the American dream.
Why shouldn't I pay back and pay my tuition? And helping somebody else is my tuition in life, because I've been so blessed with not only overcoming adversity, 6 miracles, if you want to call it, that I'm still alive. Why shouldn't I recognize that somebody else has done that for me? Why shouldn't I pay back and pay my tuition?
Everyone deserves a chance at the American dream. Johnny and Mary Louise Janosik are doing their best to help each person get a fair shot at it. To them, it's a price they are glad to pay.
If you want an hour of happiness, take a nap. If you want a week of happiness, take a vacation. But if you want a lifetime of happiness, help someone else.
Join us again for another inspiring story of perseverance, faith, and loyalty next time on Discover Delmarva. For WBOC, I'm Steve Hammond. Thanks for watching.